Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of If It Isn't Love podcast. I'm your host, Donisha.
And I'm your co-host, JL.
And we're back and black and happy to be here. We're going to do our best to stay on topic this week. Although it's our podcast, we do what we want to do. Dun, dun. I just like to make things songs. I'm happy that last week's episode gave us inspiration for this week's episode, because sometimes thinking of topics and then trying to decide if we want to do pop culture type stuff or relationship stuff, although it's fun. So
there's plenty of content out there for that.
There's tons of fodder to talk about on the podcast. So before we get into it, how are you?
I'm good. I'm just glad I'm not sneezing as much now.
Yes.
Because, allergy season is either here or upon us and whatnot. And ever since we moved into this apartment, I've been sneezing like crazy. And I'm like, oh, Rona, is that you again? Please don't come this way. Please. Mm-mm.
No, sneezing is not a symptom, though.
It's not?
No. You didn't sneeze last time.
I just went down.
Yes. You wheezed. You coughed a lot. And you were just very quiet and you breathe funny when you were sleeping, but you didn't sneeze.
Noted.
Yeah. It's definitely springtime. And so
yeah,
Houston, I know so many people who, when they visit, they are like, oh my God, the air quality sucks. But it's so funny because I feel like my allergies got so much better when I moved here. Those little pink trees that used to bloom everywhere in Chicago. Oh my God.
Beautiful looking trees.
I have woken up with my eyes swollen because the trees hated me.
Like that's part of the reason why, like, I'm afraid for my mom to visit because like she has really bad allergies, like worse than me. And like up until now, I didn't realize I was allergic to anything, and I still don't know what I'm allergic to, besides like pollen. But pollen just came in abundance this month,
right?
So. But she's like worse.
But it might not happen. That's what I'm saying. I used to have to take Benadryl and everything because I have legitimately woken up with swollen eyes from like sleeping with the window open when I was in Chicago. And I moved here, and though it's really a lot of people who have asthma. I know they were like the air quality, especially if you come in the summer, it's really hot. It gets really hot, like Satan's nutsack hot here. It gets
Don't be taking my thoughts.
So hot here. But you really never know until you start playing allergy Russian roulette.
Yeah, it's like, I'm going to spin this little Benadryl pill.
Yeah.
Is it going to work today? No.
See what happens. I'm excited. End of March, beginning of April, a new quarter in the year. I'm so amazed that we're a quarter. How did it get to be almost April? I feel like Christmas was yesterday.
It feels like it. Like in January was like supposed to be like the longest month ever. Like it was still long, but like
it wasn't as long as it normally feels.
But probably because we ain't been going anywhere like that.
Oh my God, I can't wait to leave this state, this country. I just want to leave.
I mean, we left, but it was under force.
Yeah,
kinda.
we did. We did leave the state, but it was, I'm a planner, so it's different when I didn't plan, and then it was still cold. I also want to travel. I want to go somewhere warm. We went somewhere that wasn't free. It had a few days where it was freezing. And don't get me wrong, I love going to New Orleans. We got to go to Surrey's, and I love that food. So we got to eat like really well and stayed in a nice place. So it was good, but I want to go on an intentional vacation. Like I want to take an intentional break. I honestly, without emotion, I miss my friends. I miss my family, like a lot, like a lot. And so I really want to see them. So I'm going to go get my second vid shot this week.
I'm still waiting on the wait list for the first one. So.
Yeah. But the good thing is, so starting it on Monday, so the 29th, so by the time this airs, it will have started this past Monday. In Houston, they're opening up the eligibility for COVID-19 vaccinations to all Houstonians age 16 and up. Currently, it's only open to people who are in priority groups, meaning you're like 65 and over or 62 and over. If you have some kind of a medical condition, okay, that's how I got it. I don't know if I said this on the podcast before, but if you are obese, according to your BMI chart, it is considered a pre-existing condition, or like it's a condition that makes you high risk. Or whatever. So you can get on the vaccination list. But I will tell you, when I filled it out, no one asked me, when I filled the thing out, nobody asked me how much I weighed. Nobody asked. So no one, you just checked that you have one of those, but no one did anything to verify it. I also work in a higher institution. That's the word I was looking for. An institution of higher education, but that also services K through 12 because we have our early high school program. So working in high schools puts you on the list. And of course, if you're a healthcare worker. So that's how I got it. But once I signed, like you just signed up last week, right?
Yeah.
Like once I signed up, it literally took a week and a half and they put me on the list. So, and if you go to CVS, you also have the option to go to like CVS and you can sign up there too. And I think they're doing the Johnson & Johnson. I actually had zero idea which one that I was going to get until I was there. And then they said, FYI,
it's like spin the wheel.
It's Pfizer. And then once you get the first one, they're just very intentional about making sure you get the second one. You have to wait at least 3 weeks. And so like once the 2-week mark passed, they kept sending me. When I saw the email to say, to get the second vaccination. And I was like, oh, okay, but I couldn't find any of the days I wanted to. And I was going to go out of town at that time. So I was trying to like figure everything out, cause it would have had me try to go like tomorrow or Monday or, Tuesday, retroactive, whatever. So I was having a hard time, but they legit in hours, I didn't respond, kept calling and texting because they like want you to make sure you get the second vaccination. It's
like that worried parent.
In time. So I was able to schedule mine. So I get my second vaccination on the 1st. I do have the Pfizer. Some people are believe in vaccinations. So many people don't. I know we had this conversation because so many people have the option, right? Many of us are vaccinated and didn't have a choice, right? Like if our parents allow us to get vaccinated, because I've had, measles vaccinations, polio. And I know people have their things about vaccinations, but you know why? You know what used to be a leading cause in child death in the 1920s and 30s? Polio. You know what's not now because of a vaccination? Polio. And, but I do believe people do what you want with your body. But I also don't understand people are just out here doing whatever and then, whatever. I digress. I'm getting shot because I want to be out in these streets this summer. I want to be outside. I want to be on a beach. I want to go away for our anniversary. I want to be able to, and I'm still going to wear a mask. Be very clear. I'm wearing a mask probably through a good chunk of 2022. Like, I'm still wearing a mask, even though I'm okay. And even though I can't get it, like I still will wear a mask in public spaces, but I want to go. I want to have people over to the house. I want to go home and hug my mother. Like, I want to just, I want to go places. I want to go places. Okay, this eyelash is getting on my nerves. So yeah, that's how I'm doing. Indeed. Okay. So this week's episode, we had mentioned it last week. We were talking about Derek Jackson and the cheating and all that, which, okay, side note or preface, did you hear this follow up to that a voicemail was released?
I saw a text message released, but I didn't hear the voicemail.
It's a voicemail that is like pretty much telling one of his mistresses, like to calm down. And that this happened since the video came out because she was mentioned in the video with him and his wife. And I was just like,
and he's basically trying to do damage control and all this other stuff. Like, bro, like,
right.
I get it. Like, you have a fight or a flight thing going on and everything like that. But it's like, after a while, like, come on, man, like, just give it up. Like, because
at this point, you trying to console her. That shouldn't be that's not your wife. You shouldn't be concerned that she cares about what's being said. And I also I get when you feel like you have to, explain something to somebody because you might be in the public eye, even though like it happened a long time ago. So it's like now they're having to, I would imagine how that would be frustrating. Like we're past this happened months ago, but now it's just coming. Now y'all know.
Yeah.
Right. So now we talking about it, even though it happened to them forever ago. But
yeah, I mean, it's weird, but at the same time, like, I'm still more like, I'm not really into what's happening with them because like one, like that's their problem. And then, but at the same time, like I can't take it as, you know, like this is entertainment to a certain degree. Like it's just fun. Like even when he did that third person reaction video to himself, I'm like, yeah, you are different. You are very different, bro. And it was just hilarious to me that like, bro, why are you doing this? Why are you on camera right now? We're like talking about yourself and then trying to beef yourself up. Like he probably did this, but you know, at the same time, he's a good guy. I'm like,
I didn't watch. I heard about it, but I didn't watch it.
I didn't watch all of it, but I saw like bits and pieces of it because I'm like, there's a lot, like there's just certain things you just can't get through.
Right.
But, and then like, I try not to deviate from what he's doing. Like a lot of people are going to his wife because of the whole hat thing, or they call it a hat and everything like that, or what's it, beret or something
She
like
said
that.
it was a hat and everybody else was calling it a bonnet.
It looks like them things that were advertised. Like it's like a silk cap up under.
Yeah, but it's like it's a hat so you can go outside without like messing up your hair, especially when you're natural.
And then she did this video where she had the army fatigue shirt on, like
you see this, and I'm saying it's the breastplate of God.
The helmet of something. I'm like,
I feel bad for her because I just feel like people, but especially women, because it just happens to women in the public eye, where you feel like you have to sit by and explain, you know, this man cheated on you. He was unfaithful to you. And now you have to sit here and justify like your appearance to strangers. And there's all this. And I think it's only because, not because he cheated, right? That sucks. That's bad. Mm-hmm. But because he makes his living telling women
not to go for
certain people who he turned out to be.
And then had a whole hand in a headlock.
Right. Like,
don't leave me, baby. Don't leave me.
I would have been like, first of all, I mean, I don't know. If I had decided to get on air, I would have looked so amazing. Like, only also because you see the girls that he cheated on her with were quintessential Instagram bad bitches. Mm-hmm. I mean, you think I would have... Okay, but whatever. I digress.
In her defense, though, of that, like, if you... Like, sometimes, like, when you're going through something, you just don't feel like it. Like, I understand, like, you know, that's what you would do. But I was, like, feeling bad for her because I'm like, yeah, she probably just, like, down and out and everything like that and don't necessarily feel like getting all dolled up just to be on the camera. And he probably just surprised her, like, baby, let's do this.
I wouldn't get on camera
then. True.
It's like if you feel like you gotta do that and I feel down and out, I'm not gonna get on camera. You explain to people why you fucked up.
I hear you. But, like, I was understanding until the point she got on the camera with the army fatigue and stuff like that, and basically like I was like, okay, like, you know what? It's not my business.
I don't care how she dressed. It doesn't bother me. You know, I'm saying if it were me, mm-hmm. If it were me, ain't no way you're gonna catch me out here on the camera. If I got on the camera, but more than likely I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have gotten on a video on your channel. I would have been on my own stuff. And I would have been talking. You got to sit there and say, yes, I understand. I was terrible.
Wouldn't have got out if it was on my channel.
I mean, it's just like that would not, I wouldn't have done that. But again, that's just me. And I don't think it's her fault. And so I don't like, even though like, yeah, I wouldn't dress that way. I don't want to direct all of the criticisms of the situation towards her because it wasn't her. Right. And again, you know, she could have been feeling away, but and not to say that just because time has passed doesn't mean she doesn't feel bad about it anymore. But also, it's not like she got on the camera 2 days after she found out he cheated. We're talking about months. She had left. She left. She went back home to her mom. to her mom and stayed there for a long time. And he had to, try to redeem himself. And I forget how it got out. But I think because he wrote this book about it.
Heal something.
Yeah, how to heal from da-da-da. Nah, heal, nigga, you heal. Whatever. Anyway, it sparked a conversation where we talked about, expectations in a relationship, and when you enter a relationship, what expectations you have. And I think we discussed that although we do have conversations about what we want kind of as it happens, maybe we never had a conversation of this is what I expect in a relationship and this is what I want. And I think, like, for the most part, I would like to say, I think we know what the other person expects, but, there's nothing wrong with clarifying specifics. But I think before we get into, like, going back and forth and sharing what we, came up with, the only thing I want to say is I think that expectations also evolve, right? So what you might want at one point in your relationship, it's not written in stone, so to speak, right? And I want to make sure that we both have space to feel like we are allowed to grow and change and shift and be like, what was once important to me, when we first started dating is different now. And then, we get to a point like, okay, in the first 5 years of marriage, this was important to me. And now as a parent, it's more important that this happened, or whatever the case is.
As long as like it's being like it is actually being made known versus like, how like when people like, especially with kids, like you seen kids and everything like that, and all of a sudden they are like vegetarian or something like that, and then like the parent didn't know. But
you watched Black because of Blackish.
Shoot, that was on like a couple of movies, and when like all of a sudden kids like, but it's like as long as the person who is in this space with you knows or is let know, then I mean, yeah.
And if it's going to be critical to, because sometimes there are changes that's like, if a kid goes vegetarian but they don't live at the house, then it don't matter.
True.
But if I come over for dinner, like, oh yeah, hey, by the way, or I know, like, okay, we eat keto. I go places and I don't necessarily tell people. I just be like, I'll let people know if they're going to make a big meal and they plan on me eating. Most time I just tell them, like, I have restrictions and this is what it is, but don't feel like you need to go out of the way from me, because sometimes it doesn't matter.
Like what?
My son was about to growl really loudly and I was trying to like talk over it. Okay. So that, and the other thing I want to say is I remember having this conversation with somebody about relationships and expectations, and always saying like we're supposed to be not have expectations, like go into relationship without expectation, right? It's this thought. There is a thought in dating that there's a relationship without expectation, and it's kind of like saying, I think it's more based on like not setting yourself up for disappointment, because if you don't have that expectation for people, but I just feel, and for a small amount of time, I tried to ascribe to that, like relationship without expectation, not in our relationship, but just like while I was dating, in my late 20s and stuff, like relationship without expectation. But I just feel like that's crazy, because if I don't expect anything from you, like how do you build foundation in relationship if I don't expect anything from you? It's not that the person's going to be your everything, but I do think that it is healthy to say, like, I expect you, X, Y, and Z, and give people a foundation to be like, can I live up to this? Is this something I want to live up to? Or should we find different partners? Right. So, I know you have a list. I got a little list too. I'll let you start. So I know I have 17 purposes. I also want to say, I'm going to say about my list. I designed my list about like things that I expect in general. And it is not necessarily you do or do not do these things. It is just kind of my expectation. And because we had this assignment, it made me think a little bit more of like what I like in relationship, what I believe would be healthy, and and then we can talk about what we feel like is negotiable or non-negotiable, or what it means and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
What?
Fun.
Okay, you can go first.
Okay, so I'm gonna go with tell me what you want. Not necessarily just you, but like pretty much in every relationship that I've been in, nobody like is either they're afraid to or they feel like I guess it might be too much or anything like that. Like even if it's just some like small things and whatnot, like tell me what you want, like versus me trying to like go through this whole thing and whole production of like, okay, maybe I should ask this question, maybe I should ask that question. Like if I ask you, what do you want? Tell me.
That's your expectation.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's fair. Don't look so nervous. So I'll go next. I think that something that is really important to me is open communication.
Mm-hmm.
And so this has a few different parts. Open communication that is centered on listening to understand and not listening to respond.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to learn this a lot because I think I was saying it when I was doing a training the other day. I'm a problem solver by nature. So sometimes if someone's telling me something and I feel like in the midst of you telling me something, I figured out the response, then I'm just ready to tell you how to fix it because it's how I'm built. And I've had to learn that sometimes people are talking to me just to get it out,
right,
and to talk. And if I listened longer and wasn't just thinking about how I wanted to respond, then I would catch that. I would see those cues to say, or at the end, I could just ask, what do you want help fixing this problem? Or is it just listening, or whatever the case is? And I think that sometimes in relationships, we listen to respond, especially if it is on a subject that has a point of contention. So also when I say listening to understand instead of listening to respond, and I expect open communication without deflection. So I think sometimes there are spaces where we want to openly communicate, and it's not a fear, but sometimes it is if I say this, I know there is potentially going to be deflection, and then it makes me not want to say stuff because I don't want to cause a big ruckus, right? And it's like, maybe I want to say something, but I don't want it to be blown out of proportion. And so I might weigh in my mind that it's not worth bringing up. And then sometimes that thing just builds and builds and builds and builds. And then you're really upset about it. And it's like, well, I should have said it the first time. Right. And so I think that, and I will be honest and I say, I think we're both guilty of it, to say, if someone says, well, I don't like when you do this, and then the response is, well, you do. And it really bothers me. And I think we have to do better in that and listening to understand the person, because one, we're different people, right? And sometimes there are things that you might do to me that doesn't bother me. Or like you said, there might be something like a way you say, or you think you're doing this, like it doesn't bother me, but it bothers you, right? So if you tell me, well, this bothers me, and then I say, well, you do it, but it doesn't matter, because if it doesn't bother me, then it doesn't necessarily matter that you do it as well, right? It is more of a like, yeah, but does it bother you? No, it doesn't bother me. But if it bothers you, then I need to be more conscious. I think just the other part is listening to the person when they come to say, I am like, this hurts me, or this is affecting me negatively in some way, instead of just throwing it back, well, you do this too, to say like, okay, let me take some ownership. Let me reflect to say, do I do this thing? Because ultimately I feel like if my partner is telling me that I am participating in some kind of behavior that they don't feel demonstrates love, then let me see how I can fix it. And then I can find a time, and it doesn't have to be that time. I can find a time to say, hey, can we have a conversation? Like, hey, I'm taking some time to think about how I do this thing. And I would also just like to say, I feel like there are instances when you exhibit this behavior or you do this thing, and I also don't like it, but give that person, it's like it's like if somebody comes and say like, oh, it's like, I got a promotion, like I want to celebrate me, like it's me telling you, and then somebody is like, oh, you got a promotion, well, I got a raise that's $1 more, and it's like, okay, well, this was about me right now. And it's not to negate that you feel a way and that your feelings are valid. But I think that the person who brings it up there should be some time taken to acknowledge what you feel without making you feel like you are not entitled to your feeling because you also do this thing or because you whatever. And it's deflection, right? And it's not taking ownership of that I do this thing. Because maybe you do it too, but I do it and you're bringing it to my attention. Mm-hmm. So even if I do something, you never brought it, it's like, oh, even if I'm saying you do something, but if I don't bring it to your attention and you bring it to me, you see what I'm saying? Or no? Because you start looking confused. So like,
I guess it was the way it was worded.
If you bring something to my attention, mm-hmm. and it's a behavior that I participated in, and you feel like, well, I do it sometimes too. Well, I feel like you do it sometimes too. I feel like, but I didn't say it to you. And so if you saying, Donisha, you always let the avocados go bad and it's really bothering me. And I feel like, well, you let them go bad too. For me to be like, if you're like, I haven't said it to you, I didn't bring it up. It either didn't bother me or it didn't register to me, right? But if you say you let the avocados go bad, and then I'm like, well, you let them go bad too. It just negates your feelings and how you feel. And now it's like, now it's a thing, right? And it could have not been a thing. It could have been like, man, you're right. I'm missing it. And I want to be more diligent about making sure that I'm okay. And, if you see them, like, let me know. Hey, the avocados are going bad. We need to do something with them. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just like something random. But I think that when the first response we have to our partner communicating something to us is a deflection and not taking any accountability, not even thinking about, do I do this thing? How does it affect the person? But just immediately saying, well, you do it too. Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about having communication and being in a space where we can tell each other anything, sometimes it makes that door or that window to tell the other person something very small, because it's like, well, if I say this, then I have to think about like, do I say this? Do it? Because it can make you feel like if I say this thing, well, then they're just going to say, well, you do it too. And we're never going to get anywhere because we're not taking time to just be accountable and open and listening to understand what you mean. And sometimes you ask questions like, what do you mean by that? Like, how does that make you feel? And I know it seems like overkill, but I feel like it's really important to just be like, how does that make you feel? Like, what do you feel like? And sometimes it's not like our partner did something. I think oftentimes we have other triggers and things in our past and our history that make a person feel this. And if we are just willing to have communication and to be accountable to say, I made you feel this way, even if it's not my intention. Sometimes it doesn't have to be our intention to harm a person to harm them. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important to just realize. Like, I think I can hurt your feelings even if it was not in my intention. And I'm still responsible to say, like, I'm sorry that this action that I took hurt your feelings. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm wrong. It just means I even inadvertently participated in an activity that hurt you. And I can own that, and still we can figure out how to avoid that. We can figure out where that comes from. And sometimes it doesn't mean that the person who offended needs to change. Mm-hmm. It's just acknowledge I did something, and then like maybe then you need to do something to say like, maybe I shouldn't be so offended when it's because this person, because I feel offended because this is what people usually mean. But if I know your intention, then I can adjust how I feel. I know I said a lot in that one thing. I think I ended up like squeezing a few because I talked about a little about accountability, but okay.
I think I get it. I understand where you're coming from. But I also have to figure out where like, because I mean, yeah, there's been times like deflection honestly is a new word for me anyway. But I mean, because I've never like nobody really ever defined, or not necessarily defined, or they'll say that I do something but never put a real word to it. Mm-hmm. And of course, deflection never has come up in like a in school or anything like that. So I was like, never really needed to. You know, like all I needed to know was art terms and whatnot. But I think for the most part, I know I get a lot of that from growing up, especially being around people who like always put blame on other people and everything like that. And then even relationships where it's like I don't complain about a whole lot. I don't really even like trying to like bring up a whole bunch of different stuff. And sometimes that's with like, that's doing damage to me to a certain degree. And I didn't realize that. But I think mostly in most of my relationships, it's always like, Jeremy, you did this. Jeremy, you didn't do this. Jeremy, you didn't do this. This. I'm like, and it's like overwhelming after a certain point in time. It's like you always constantly feel like you're getting blamed for something that, you know, the other person is actually not either doing or not doing themselves. And it's like, why are you like, not you, but it's like, why is that person yelling at me for something that they won't even do themselves, or something that they aren't actively trying to do? Like, say if it's even something small, like even if it's something that I forget or forget to do, I really don't know. Have an example, but generally it's like it would be either something small or like say if I forgot to grab something from the store or anything like that, and like all of a sudden like it's a big deal that I didn't grab that certain item from a store. Next thing you know, like after a while, like versus like working with me to like figure out like why that's happening, it's like constantly just pointing the finger. But I'm like, okay, if you forget something at the store, I don't really complain about it. I'm like, okay, we could just go back or go next time. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, I definitely do need to work on that as far as getting out of that mindset and actually accept like in the back of my mind, I do accept the accountability, but I'm like, I want both of us to accept accountability on that one because I don't want to be wrong. But
oh, you don't want to be wrong, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think just even in that moment, like, okay, Jeremy, you didn't do this. And there's also how like that person talks to that person as well, like versus it being like feeling like a mother-son situation or like a teacher-student situation and everything like that, and I'm in trouble or anything. I think for me, like in that moment, need to just be like, okay, I did this or I didn't do this. I'm sorry. I'll work on that, or I'll go back, or I'll do whatever that needed to be done for it.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned something when you were like, well, you know, but it, you know, say you forgot something and I was just like, okay, you forgot it. And then you're like, well, when you forget stuff, I don't, you know, and so like in that, it can be like, but you're not bothered by it. And that's the thing. Like you may not be bothered in the way that I was, depending on what it is, right? Depending on what it is, you might not be bothered. So I'm just saying, I think sometimes we expect people to react exactly like we react or to take it exactly the way we would. And I think there's a lot of different factors that go into it, right? And so I think ultimately we always need to approach one another with understanding and come from a place of, I had a teacher that would always say, assume best intent. No, it was a boss. Like she used to always say, assume best intent, especially with people you love, right? And that you're in close relationship with. Always assume that whatever this person did, they did it with good intentions. So I think we operate in a way that you did not if you forget something from the store, even it might irritate me and I might want to be like, oh God, because I've had a long day and other people have done stuff. And now I just like want to make this, I want to cook this thing and I'm trying to make sure we eat because I'm trying to do my thing and make sure we eat. But you forgot this thing in the store that is critical. So I'm like frustrated. And again, there are other factors that have zero to do with you. And even though it's a minor thing, it is compounded on top of all the other stuff. Mm-hmm. So it might make me more upset in that moment as opposed to like on a Sunday where it's like, okay, whatever, we'll just go back later, or something that wasn't vital and we didn't need it or whatever the case is. But if I tend to be more rigid and about that kind of thing because it's like, okay, I need this because it's going to take time, and you're more like aloof about that kind of stuff and it doesn't tend to bother you. So it's kind of like, and that's what I mean. Like sometimes there are things that just don't affect people the same way, right? Like there are things that like, if I pull this thing out and don't eject it properly, right? Mm-hmm. You're like, what the hell? Like you might be like, I'm just saying, it might be something like technological, like, hey, you got to press this first. You got to do it in this order because you can corrupt the disk or do it. There have been tons of things electronic and that you have told me like, hey, you got to do it this way because if you do this, like this will mess us up. For me, it don't matter. Right. So if I just pull it out, I'd be like, nah. But it would be like, it could frustrate you if I don't do it in the right way because you understand and because you're just coming from a different perspective. Mm. So if I saw you do it, I wouldn't be like, well, I'd just be like, well, you must know a part that I don't know or whatever. It wouldn't frustrate me just because I don't have that same connection to that thing. But it doesn't mean you're wrong for feeling the way you feel. True.
I'm think my correlation even just to the whole store situation, not because I don't think this has happened with us. But
talk about, I don't know if you want a real example.
What? Sure.
Like forgetting to pay a bill.
Oh, yeah. Now, yeah, I mean, I do need help with that and I do need reminders on that because like that, I mean, if it was even the electric bill, like you get the notifications. I don't.
But you also know, like, if you assume this responsibility, mm-hmm. right? I got to pay the bill. It's due same time every month, and you have access to check, then you're like, yes. Then you're saying, I need to go in check, even if it's not a specific day. It is a day of the week. There are bills that come at the same time every day, and I know that I'm very rigid, and sometimes I don't want to always feel like I have to nag you. I don't want to approach you in a, Jeremy, do this. You didn't do this. You forgot to do this. Because then I don't want you to ever feel like I'm always telling you what to do. Right? Like, I don't want that. So sometimes I don't want to remind you and I'll like and there have been times where I told you and you're like, I know. And you look at me like, I know. And I don't think you do it. You're just like, I know, and you haven't done it. But I don't know if you legitimately forgot, because that happens, or you are waiting for something else to come through so that you can then handle it, right? Because it varies. So like, I be wanting to tell you like sometimes, and sometimes, I just will like, hey, this needs to be handled, whatever. But it is one of those things like, and I've learned, because I think initially it would bother me, but it happens fairly often, and I don't let it bother me unless it is like late. Then I get bothered.
Now, okay, yeah. Like even when it's late, that's more like an out of sight, out of mind situation. Cause like even still like when we moved and everything like that, and I checked the bill, I'm like, what did I not pay? Like when we like, it was like 2 bills at once and everything like that. And technically we aren't supposed to pay that.
Right.
But I was like, what didn't I pay? Like I went to a whole like different thing, and all of a sudden like okay, maybe I did forget something, and turns out I didn't. But like, I mean, I know I can definitely work on the whole part of like, even like I had calendar reminders, but then even the calendar reminders, I was paying that shit hella early. I'm like, that money could have went towards groceries and whatnot. So that's why I'm like, okay, after a while, I'm like, okay, either I'm getting it wrong or something's not meshing up with my calendar. So that's where that comes from. Like now, technically the internet bill, yeah, that's understandable as well. But like I try to make sure like all the other stuff is paid. Like I know definitely rent is due the first of the month. Yeah. I know when that is. But and then when you remind me and everything, like I don't take anything bad from it, or like I take it as a reminder, like, hey, babe, you need to pay this. I'm like, cool. And because more than likely I did forget. But I mean, even when like the whole, like when I went into AT&T, I tried to see if there was a way for me to get the notifications on my phone. So I'm like, okay, I can get notified when the bill is due or when the bill had at least posted. Cause like I've gone like to the AT&T app and it's like this, you know, like there's still nothing due. Like, okay, it's normally supposed to happen around this time. Did I pay it early or did something happen? So yeah. Okay. But yeah, as far as like what I can do about, like if it irritates you, like I thought like you were just reminding me just because like that I guess like that was a team effort. But I can try to figure out what I can do to put it on my calendar and be accurate with it.
I mean, it's not an irritation. I mean, there are definitely things that automatically come out of my account. So if you don't give me the money to put in my account, like if I tell you car insurance needs to be paid, it's already out of my account. So they took it. I just need it back in mine. So sometimes it is a matter of like my account doesn't reflect what it should because these things are all set on auto pay. So they're taking the money. It's not that the bill isn't paid. It is paid. And I think I will own that sometimes it makes me feel like then I have to be the responsible. Like I have to be responsible in that area. Because what happens if like I can't forget? Because I have to always remind. So it's like I can't forget that kind of stuff. I don't have that luxury to forget, like to pay this thing. I sit and the only reason I have a financial calendar the way I have it is because I start the job that I have, I get paid once a month. So I was making the mistake of paying bills too early and then they'll be like, no, it's still due on this date, even though you paid it 3 weeks ahead of time. So, cause you shouldn't have, because it wasn't due until whenever. So I have to know like what's coming out of my account, when, whatever. So, and I try to check it at least once a week. And sometimes I mess up, right? Like I forgot to pay a bill yesterday from when I got my dental work done. So they like charged me a late fee, which is almost as much as the amount. But luckily I was able to call them and tell them like, and they gave you like a one-time courtesy where they waive it. And so like it happens because it was something that wasn't due to the end of the month. And when I hadn't, it wasn't due at the time that I got paid. So I didn't pay it. But a lot of times I remind myself to go back in like on Sunday when I'm doing my to-do list and just update and see is anything coming out of my account this week? Are there any updated bills that I need to go ahead and pay? And I write it down. I just write down if it's due this time every month, then I get having the electronic calendar. I like something on paper so that I can look at, I round everything up. So if it's $51.22, it's, $52. And then I'm able to have an assessment. And I do feel like we're in a place as you're older where you have to do it, especially when, when your money is coming like at once, you want to plan stuff. You got to know, do I have money to this other thing? Because I don't want to get to a place where, and I've been there, where then I'm like trying to figure out how to not avoid eating ice sandwiches, but right before payday, because I don't have the money to do it because I wasn't being proactive. And I guess I know it's your term, but I guess it's one of my expectations too. My expectation is that we're both doing the household stuff. I know I might be better like with numbers and financials and keep stuff, and I'm a scheduler. I'm that one, and that's not you. And I honestly do not have any issue with taking the primary responsibility in terms of making sure we're organized in that way. But I also need you to like just like be on your stuff about it, to be like, yeah, okay. Like if you're doing this, then like I'm gonna make sure that I'm communicating like what I'm doing, where, you know, like all that kind of stuff. So I just think that is my thing, and whatever. I'll let you go to with your next thing.
One thing definitely in a relationship, I do not like to be stressed out. What?
You don't want to be stressed out?
I don't. Like, it is like the quickest way to get me to leave. It's the quickest way to, well, not the quickest, but it's one of those things where it's like, it's going to build up over time. And like, I'm basically going to be walking through the house like on autopilot and everything like that. Yeah, like, it's like those memes, like, you know how like, with the Mekhi Phifer and the cigarette and everything, he's just like,
oh, he's playing Bobby Brown movie.
Yeah, or Ben Affleck sitting outside with his cigarette, like, yeah, like, I don't want to have to resort to smoking in order to relieve stress and everything like that. And it's like, I just think that's a priority for me, because of the fact, like, I used to handle stress very, very well, and then next thing you know, like, I'm like, okay, I'm not okay with a lot of stuff or with certain things, and then especially being put into stressful situations and whatnot, I'm like, yo, like previous relationships, it was like, don't get me wrong, like there are things where like I'm probably pretty sure that I probably did to stress them out, but at the same time, nobody ever told me.
So when you're saying your expectations is to not be stressed out, in what way? Because how I interpret it is like, life is stressful, and so I can't prevent you from being stressed out. I mean, I can prevent and definitely adjust my participation in you stressed out in a to a certain extent, but sometimes like I might have to bring things to you that are just stressful, and it's the thing, and it's not me.
The way that you bring it, not you, but it's the way that a certain person like can bring that information to that person without it being a whole huge thing. Like, yeah, arguing is always gonna happen, but at the same time, like, if it's something that you are always doing, like if it's like constant argument almost every single day about something, like, I've been in that situation where it's like it's like constant arguing, like every single day, like almost every single day. And it's like, yo, like, we should just call it quits, because like, I'm not going to go through this situation every single time. Or like, there's been situations where I'm like, I'm glad you don't do this, but like, I've been out and everything like that with friends and everything like that, and like, we are genuinely like having a good time, but all of a sudden, like, the person I'm with doesn't like the fact that I'm having fun or something like that, or they feel like because I'm not with them that it's an issue.
Oh, it's definitely not me.
Yeah. Or if I
want you to get out more. I mean, the Rona, I know, right. I get it.
But like, or if I decide to like go to like, it's rare when I go to the movies by myself or anything, or if I decide to do something on my own, like, or even go on a photography walk or something like that, and I come home and it's like nothing but attitude and everything like that, and next thing you know, it's like throughout the day, like, it's like little hints. Oh, but you don't have to do this with me. I'm like, you wanted to do this by yourself and this, that, and the other. I'm like, why couldn't I just have that why can't I have that by myself?
Yeah.
Like, there will be plenty of times for us to do the same thing. Just this time, I wanted to do it by myself. Or I'm accused of being with somebody because I'm not with them. Like, no, I went on a photography walk by myself. Me and the elements. That's it. Don't stress me out. I'm glad you don't do this. But that's one of the things that I expect out of a relationship. Like, just not to be stressed out in that way.
That's on my list. I mean, not the stressed out, but on my list of being able to have, although we're partners, that we are still able to be individuals and have our own stuff. Like, I mean, I probably leave the house more often to do my own thing because I think it's important. I spent years getting to know me, and I still value my alone time. And I think part of it is the house. I used to have parts of the house to be alone and do my thing, and I don't have that anymore. You know, in the house necessarily, we don't have a house large enough where we each have our own spaces, because even our workspaces are shared. And it's not because it's bad, right? It's not bad, but I do value my privacy and my alone time, and that's important to me, that I'm able. And I think that it's a part of trust. Like I should be able to just like be on my own. I ain't out here doing nothing reckless, but you know. And sometimes I just want to like be alone and do my own thing. And you should have that right to do that as well. So I think that something that I expect in a relationship is affection and intimacy that is not equated with sex. And I know we've had this conversation before. So, you know, I listened to this podcast, the Love Hour podcast. And they were having a conversation, and I really felt it like hit the nail on the head for me. And I'll preface this right. Like, this is my perception. So it's like how I see things. And it's not necessarily right now. And I know we've kind of had this conversation before. So, but like, this is how I was feeling before. How I felt before is, you know, she was telling her husband that, you know, sometimes, you know, her expectation is that there can be hugs and touches and physical intimacy that is not overly sexual, that is not always like, okay, now we're gonna do it because and how he was interpreting it is that like, if we're hugging and we touch and then you hug and touch me back and it gets a little heated, now we're gonna do it. And then it put her in a place where she's like, no. And then she finds herself having to like push him away because it's like, no, that's not what's happening. Or when he approaches her in that way, immediately kind of like tensing up because there's this thought that it may go down this road. And I think that I definitely resonated with that because I enjoy physical intimacy and touches and affection and holding and cuddling. But I feel like I don't often want it to go to a place of like very overt sexual acts. And so I'm going to say that instead of just sex. Because sometimes it's not sex, but it can be like very overt sexual acts. And it's not that there is not place for that. And I know sometimes it's like, oh, is this the right time? Is this the wrong time? And it can feel that way. I think just kind of like picking up on cues and not like, I think that from my perspective, we were at a point where it was like often like that. And it made me feel like I can't enjoy some of the physical affection without it just being like, and scene. Like, it's gonna end here. Like, we're gonna hug and we're gonna kiss and we're gonna hold each other while I cut up an avocado. Because I'm looking at this avocado right here. This is why I keep saying avocado. While I cut up an avocado, and then we'll move on with our day. And it won't escalate to, you know, in the pants or, you know, like groping and stuff like that, which ain't wrong, right? It has its space to do it. And I just think like sometimes there is there was a point where it was like always that. So my expectation is that there is both, but that it's not always that, because then I think it was putting me in a headspace where then I was feeling like I'm not receiving the affection well. Even when it's not there, it makes me tense, because it's like, does it have to go there? And then I was inadvertently, I think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, making you feel bad, and then you not knowing how to approach me at all. And then we get to a space where we're not being physically affectionate because we're not relating to one another. But we're not saying that.
2 points. I feel like we definitely need to have that conversation earlier. Because like we've talked about it, but at the same time, like in the beginning when we were dating, when we were in a relationship, that wasn't really a thing. Mainly because like we were long distance. But I think when it comes to like physical touch and affection, like most of the time, like you rub on me, I rub on you, next thing you know, boom.
Right.
We had it. That's basically, we were conditioned for that. And that's kind of the way I expected things to go after a certain point. So don't get me wrong. I do like, actually, this is a funny ass word, but cuddling and shit. I like to be, maybe I want to be the big spoon today. Maybe I want to be the little spoon. I don't know. Feeling cute. But I think for the most part, like, like I don't mind that. I just think that needed to have been made clear from the get-go, because like, it was confusing after a certain point where I'm like, okay, I didn't know whether to touch you or not, or I didn't know whether to like be okay with like coming up behind you while you're doing something in the kitchen, or while you're sitting at the desk and everything like that. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, all I do is just want to hug you and like kiss you and everything like that. That's it. And then, but I don't know, like as far as like you're saying, like pick up on cues and everything like that. Like there weren't really any cues to pick up on in the beginning.
So I want to clarify, and I know we kind of said this in the beginning when we talk about the evolution of a relationship. So when we started dating, we were in a long distance relationship. So we were going weeks without any physical contact. Mm-hmm. We were not in each other. Aside from the fact that it was new, right? And new is always more like want to be next to you, want to touch you, want to kiss you, right? Not that we shouldn't have that, and not that we don't have that now, mm-hmm. but when in the beginning, where you're trying to figure out like how even physically, sexually compatible you are with the person, you're doing that. The other part is, so since we were in a long distance relationship, we were like, 4 to 6 weeks of no kind of, like not even like hugging, holding hands, laying in the same bed, no kind of physical contact. And then we had like 3 to 5 days to be physical. The other part of that is that we were on vacation. So for the most part, even when you came to visit in Houston, I may have like, gone to work like a day or so, but for the most part, I was on vacation even when you were here. So it was like we weren't living together. Mm-hmm. So we weren't seeing one another in our daily whatever.
Right.
It was mostly like, so vacation is different. Right? Sleep whenever it was like you're on a boat, or we were in a different city having a good time. Even when we were together and like I was on a conference, like, I'm not, it's not traditional work. I go to a few sessions and I got the rest of the day to do whatever we want to do. So in times where for me, we weren't having to be as responsible. I didn't also have to do all the daily things that now, I'm just beating my microphone, that now I have to do mm-hmm. during the day, where I'm still like trying to work, trying to do X, Y, and Z. So I think in terms of being able to communicate that in the beginning, I didn't know that was going to be a thing. For me, this is my first relationship. I've never lived with anybody outside of a relationship. I've never lived with someone that I was in romantic partnership with. This is it. So I don't have any background. I don't have anything to compare it to. So I wasn't, and I'm not. I wasn't in a space to tell you how I would be when we lived together and what I like, because I don't know. Even in sharing my space in roommate spaces, I always have my room. I have my space to have my thing. And, we share our common areas, but, I can be in my room and be away from a person the whole time and not see them, and whatever the case is. So for me, that was different. I couldn't tell you that when we were, and because it was like, if I know we're not going to see each other for, 6 weeks, then we're going to, in the 3 days, we're going to have a lot of sex. Every touch is probably going to lead to something else. And, not on camera, like something like that. So I couldn't tell you that, while I'm trying to make dinner because I want to get this done in time so I can go and make sure I get my stuff ready to go to work the next day, what that would be like. I couldn't tell you what my, feelings would be and what my sexual appetite would be during a pandemic, because I could not tell you that any of that would happen, and that it was triggering a part of me in my depression where I was not feeling sexual, and then wanting to feel sexual for you, it felt like I wasn't sexy and I couldn't do it right. And that made me feel bad, which just made me feel even less sexy. And it was just like me going through this internal thing and feeling anxious, and then just not knowing how to communicate that to you. And then being in this space where then it creates this weird space and this weird tension where we don't know now we're, and I think we're slowly trying to figure it out again, but it's where it's like, you don't know how to react, because I don't want you to feel like you shouldn't hug me or you shouldn't, do any of those things and be or that it can never escalate to something more substantial in the sexual realm. But just figuring it out. I didn't know any of that in the beginning because it wasn't an issue. It was always vacation and there was no responsibilities. We could do it. And the life is just different now. And, you see stuff when you're not in a relationship where you watch them on TV, like, oh, how could she not have sex with him even if she's tired? Like, you see people on TV. Nah. Not me, but like, I get it when I'm like even working from home a lot, like when you're mentally exhausted and you're tired and you just had to feel like you have responsibility and you're just thinking. And I never realized, like, with me being so anxious, like how the effect that it would have. And I never have been in a space where I've had sex regularly. So legitimately in my entire sex life, it's always been, because I've always been in long distance relationships or in more casual relationships where it wasn't like, oh, we see each other every, whatever. Or they were short spans of time. So I might have been dating this person and maybe we were physically intimate, but it was like 3 months. And so I felt like, whatever. Or until like then the next time I date somebody, it might be 5 months later. So I'm used to going very long periods of time without being sexually intimate. So I think part of I'm conditioned. And so even like in the beginning when it's like when we're living together and I'm like, oh, every other day, like that's often or like whatever. And just because I wasn't used to it.
I think like, okay, yeah, our sexual background is very, very different.
Yeah, you thought.
Shut your face. But so for the most part, yeah, like there have been relationships where I've had like sex almost every day. And it just always seemed like there was something different only because we weren't doing the regular.
What you mean you weren't doing the regular?
Like we were always trying different things. Like it wasn't like it wasn't just missionary and everything like that. So it was like, or feeling very vanilla. I think like only up until like when I it was like the 6-year relationship where like I wasn't having sex every day. And that was partially because of, long distance. It was partially because like, Christianity and stuff like that, trying to be a whole different person. But it was still a little weird because like we weren't having penetrative sex. We were having...
Yeah, that'd be so weird.
Like,
I used to be like that. I haven't had sex, but doing everything else. Might as well.
Like it was different because like she would always like, no, we can't do it. Like we have to save ourselves, this, that, and the other. Like, and then it's, like oral sex was on the table, and I'm like, she's like, oh, okay. I'm like,
yeah,
you're weird, but okay, I'm going for it.
Yeah, you feel that if you say that, you'd be like, okay,
right.
So you can put your face there. That's fine.
Right. So for the most part, it was just even in that situation, I felt like after that relationship ended, I was like, okay, I do not want to be in a relationship where I'm not having sex. Like because I enjoy being that person with that other person. So, and don't get me wrong, like there are like definitely certain times where I'm like, yo, I'm tired. I don't want to give you this 50%. I want to give you all of me. But
oh my God,
I'm just saying. But and because it's not a good feeling where you can't like where like I understand like if you're tired and everything like that, like yeah, like I get it, because like there's been points in time where I'm like, should I roll over and just let her have her way with me and whatnot?
Not let her have her way. Oh my gosh.
But I think the one thing that I do expect, like especially out of sex, is like they're being able to try certain new things and everything like that, or being open to new things. Like there are certain things that I know we won't be doing.
Yeah, we've had that conversation.
Yeah, and certain things that will not be happening, but like other stuff, like okay, like stuff that possibly could land us in the hospital, but just won't.
You want to go to the hospital? They got a whole show, Sex Sent Me to the Hospital. You want to be on there? Sex Sent Me to the ER.
Is it pain?
Huh?
Is it pain?
We'd have to actually have, no, it doesn't, because they do recreation. So we would actually hurt ourselves, and then someone else would act it out and get paid. I don't know if you get paid for your story. I don't know. I'm just
here to tell my story. No,
I don't want sex that sends you to the ER. I
said possibly.
I don't want the possibility. Maybe an ice pack.
I mean, with the way our knees are and the way our backs are.
Regular sex.
Nah, we ain't doing that.
Ice pack.
But not like, stuff that is just not, like sticking straight to missionary and stuff like that. But I think like this is probably the only time where I basically felt like, because like, the pandemic is something new. So it's like, like it feels weird.
Yeah.
To have sex at certain times and everything like that. I'm like, okay. Like we've been around each other all day. She actually watched me take a shower, like knows when I took a shower and everything like that. Or and then on top of that, I don't like having sex at regular times, like the whole bedtime situation. Like I'm like,
which is funny because you talked about like doing stuff at different times, but in the beginning, it was not exclusively, but it was very often at nighttime. Like when on vacation, we can go do a whole bunch and it's not that we.
But we also had sex during the day.
That was bonus. We still would have sex again at night. We very rarely just went to sleep at night. So if we had sex during the day, that was in addition to sex at night. So if it's like you only want to have sex so like that is something, and again, I'm not blaming, I'm just saying it changed.
Mm-hmm.
So like when you got to a point where like, no, we would have sex during the day, I'm like, yeah, but we always have sex at night. If we happen to be able to have sex during the day because our schedule or whatever we had going on, we woke up in enough time, or we woke up from a nap and we still had time or whatever, because we were on vacation and we weren't, it was different.
But I get you on that. But I think for like, even for me, like it's one of those things like, okay, scenario. Picture
it. Sicily, 1920.
But it's like, okay, so like even when we were in New Orleans and like we actually like, okay, you were looking very nice and everything like that. I'm like, okay, this is about to happen. It's going to happen. I can feel it. And so, normally people would wait until they get back home and everything like that. I'm like, but I want it now. So like before we went to dinner, we had sex. And it just felt natural to me. It didn't feel like it was planned or anything like, you know what? We're going to have sex on Saturday. I'm going to bring a shot of ACD.
Yeah, but it's not that. I don't think it was ever that. It just was. Like, it would just be like I said, like I have my things about sex, you're probably more likely if you catch me right out of the shower and that kind of thing, because I want to be fresh, all that kind of stuff. But that's what we did. We took our showers at night. Sometimes we took showers together, and then that's where the night ended. If we did it during the day, it was just also, it still happened at night. That's what it was.
I'm talking about like bedtime, like you feel like you have to, like you're on your way to bed. Like normally, if I'm getting in bed, it's because I'm going to sleep.
But that's what I'm saying. In the beginning, when you first moved here, you didn't. You would come to bed when I went to bed because I'm the early bird, because I want to be up, and not also because I want to, because I have to. I can't sleep till 10. Even if I didn't have to go into the office, I just can't sleep that long, that late, because it's usually not in me. But also, even when I work from home, I have to be somewhere. I have to be available at 8:00. And sometimes that means I have to, people got to be able to see me. Meaning I got to look a certain way, at least from the navel up, by 8:00 in the morning. So, whereas you might feel like, well, I can stay up later and whatever. I can't. And I've been trying to fight this. Like, I feel like I have to come to terms with it. I need a little bit more sleep than I'm normally. I'm used to being able to like go to sleep at 11, wake up at 4:30, go work out, and I could do that for weeks. And I don't have that body no more.
Welcome to the dark side.
And I'm sad because I need more sleep. So I need to start getting ready for bed earlier, and I need to be able to sleep to a certain time, because if not, it really does affect me all day. And I'm just coming to terms with that. Like I used to be able to go 4 or 5 hours sleep. I need like minimally 6, but preferably 7. But you used to do the whole bedtime routine, come to bed with me. And we'd do our thing. Then you would get up and go do your thing. But that's what I'm saying. You still did bedtime routine with me often, not always, but often. 3 times a week or whatever, like 2 or 3 days during the weekday. That's what I meant.
So is that something that's an expectation?
No, I'm not saying it's an expectation. I think the conversation has pivoted a little bit because we're just talking about like times a day having sex.
No, I'm just wondering if like that's something that was expected that we didn't.
No, I just think it changed. So when you were saying like I don't necessarily like having, that's not something I knew, because when we talk about change, that is what was it is what was happening. That's what was happening. And then that was always like me, like I'm like, okay, I take a shower, like whatever, I'm more comfortable. And again, I'm not saying we can never have sex during the day. I just never, when I'm like, if I've been walking around and cleaning and moving and outside and doing everything for, I don't want to, even if I'm like, I smell fine when I come home and it's been a few hours, I don't feel comfortable. I get really self-conscious. I'm going to be in my head about it. So I'm not going to be able to do it. And it doesn't mean like, there's not like a prescription of a certain number of hours or whatever. But like, sometimes like, if it's like, oh, I just took a shower at 7:00 this morning and it's 3:00 this afternoon and I've been outside and I've been running errands and stuff, like I'm probably not. I know my body too, and I'm not a little girl. So thighs rub.
What does that mean?
She sweats. She is not always the freshest. You don't have to care. It's my body. Okay. And I don't feel sexy. I don't feel, and as a person with a vagina, you are really setting yourself up for potentially having like infections and stuff. Like when you're not, if you're like, I have to make sure I'm like, you know, if you're not cleaning up, you're not doing what you need to do. I don't want to be sweaty and funky and mushing genitals. Okay. I just want, and again, it ain't never gonna smell like roses. That's not what it's meant to smell like. But I don't want to be like, I know, like, I sweat. I mean, you know, we're sweaty people. I sweat and I don't have to be running a marathon to sweat. Right now, sure. Right? Like I could be sitting and the first thing that sweats is right here in the area. And so again, I'm not saying that it's a never. I'm just saying like, again, and I think when I'm like mentioning, like you didn't realize that had changed. Cause you're like, no, I want to have sex during the day. Like we'll have to have sex at night. I don't like sleep at night. But I'm like, okay, like it changed. Cause it used to be that way. And I just think part of going back to the expectation is my expectation is like that we can grow and evolve with one another. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes we have to come back to these points to have conversations to say, man, you know what? This has changed. Like, let's talk about it. Because I think sometimes things happen so gradually that you don't realize it happened till it's just different. Mm-hmm. And then you're trying to figure out, like, when did this change? Like, we used to always do this. And then you're like, oh, wait, it happened like this. And then like over weeks and months.
True. But I think even the whole bedtime routine situation, that was me trying to be somebody else or trying to be normal, I guess. Because like, I think for the most part, like, yeah, I do want to be in bed with you and like being able to like fall asleep right next to you and everything like that. More times than anything, I'm not going to be asleep. I'm just going to be staring at the ceiling until like, you know, something happens. And then as you know, I'd fall asleep like 3 hours later, because even happens right now. Like even last night, like I laid in bed. You were like, I envy people who can fall straight the hell asleep.
I can fall asleep right now if I
want
to.
My brother used to do that. Like my play brother Eric, he used to do that. And we had bunk beds and everything like that. Like as soon as he lays down, he's out. I'm like, you don't think about me? You don't reflect on your day at night, bro? Come on.
I start my dreams. You know where I taught you how to start your dreams?
No.
I start my dreams. So I'll say like, oh, I want to dream about this. And then I'll start like making up stories in my head. And the next thing I know, I'll be asleep. I start my dreams while I'm awake a lot of the time. I don't just, and I don't think about the stuff that's happening. If I'm thinking about what's happening in my world and in life, my anxiety will kick in and all of the dopamine, all that will raise, my cortisol levels will raise and I'll be up. I don't think about what's happening in the world. I start dreaming about other random stuff. I start thinking about movies. We were watching Justice League last night. So then after when I got to a place where we were going to sleep, I just started, I was tired. But then I started thinking about, what do you call it? I started like saying, oh, I wonder how the movie's going to end. I started thinking about Superman going off with Lois Lane. And that's what I was thinking about when I went to sleep. I wasn't thinking about COVID or none of that craziness.
I wasn't thinking about COVID. Just nothing. I wasn't thinking about future stuff. And then I started playing Monopoly.
I wasn't doing any of that. Like I started thinking about Superman and I fell asleep. I'll be starting my dreams. And I don't know, and I'm sure I didn't dream about Justice League the whole night, but that's just how I started it because I wanted to go to sleep. Orgasms help too. So that helped me sleep a lot last night. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, I mean, and you said something when you said like that was you trying, right? So the other part is if you, and I think I think most people are probably guilty of this. If you put on this persona, like this is who I am, and you do it long enough, then I think that's who you are. So when you go to being yourself, it feels disingenuous, right? It may not feel authentic to me because that is not the version of you that was sold to me. And I'm not saying like you and like it's not the bedtime thing is not a huge, it's not a huge deal to me. But I'm saying like that, right? So if just because we're having that conversation where you're like, I'm not a bed, like that's not my thing. I want to be up all night and, going to bed early is not my thing. But I'm just like, but that's not what was sold to me. That is not the image that was presented to me, because that is what we did. Even when we were on vacation. Like, I don't know what you did. Like, so I'm lying. Because sometimes I know you did get up. Because even was on a cruise and you woke me up in the middle of the night because I guess you couldn't sleep. And you was walking around the boat and you saw how beautiful the stars were. So you came back and woke me up and made me put clothes on and go see the stars. Which I was like, why? But it was so beautiful. So it ended up being cool. Right? But you still got into bed with me at night. So we're talking about, close to a year, or no, because even when you moved here. So you're talking about like a year of like that. Mm-hmm. And then it was like, oh, I can't do this anymore. But it is part of the version of you that was presented to me that I fell in love with.
I feel you. But I think it wasn't necessarily just what I was trying to do for you. It was also what I was trying to do for myself. Like, I was trying to be, like, I was trying to be open to being that person who who wakes up early. Because, like I had been watching like a whole bunch of videos and whatnot on YouTube. Like, okay, this is what people do when they get up and, they're able to start their day early. I started watching like The Rock and everything like that. He wakes up at like 4 o'clock in the morning.
He's insane.
I'm like, bruh, come on now. Like,
but then look at his results. So it's like,
true, but that's when that's when I was normally going to bed, or at 8 o'clock, or sometimes even 9 o'clock in the morning. That's when I was going to bed. So I was trying to be that person, like trying to reverse that, and it was not working after a while. So it wasn't just about me coming to bed with you. Like, that was a major part of it. But I was also trying to be that person who was like, I've never been that person able to get up early in the morning. Because even for school, like I was never that person. Like my mom always had me practicing karate, like early in the morning to wake myself up and exercise myself and everything like that. I'm over here like and still halfway asleep. Mm-hmm. Or even when we got to Fisk and everything like that, my mom signed me up for 8 o'clock a.m. classes. I definitely failed those classes because I did not go.
And I'm not saying anything of it is for me. I'm not saying it was for me. I'm just saying it is what was happening. Irrespective to why you did it or whatever, it's what was happening. It was happening. And so you're well within your right to adjust. But I think that is just saying like, hey, this is how I contributed to this being different, because I couldn't do that anymore. And so I'm not regularly participating in the nighttime routine like I used to. And so now we go to sleep separately. Mm-hmm. A lot more than we did before. Mm-hmm. I think before it was a lot like, we go to bed at the same time, or we start laying down at the same time. But a lot of times now it's like, no, I'll tell you good night. And then, or it used to be, I'll tell you good night. And then you would start getting ready for bed. And then like maybe 20 minutes after I got into bed, you would come to bed too. But it's not like that. I'd be asleep, way asleep. And sometimes I get up in the morning and you still up. So, but that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, so when we're having that conversation on how, like, I know we're talking about sex a lot. When we talk about how that has shifted, it is, and I don't want to assign fault in any of this, right? So I don't think it's anybody's fault. I just think that when we're saying like, this is how I've contributed to that shift, right? And so that's that. I think that this is a good, it's definitely time to eat. I think this is a good topic. And do you still have more stuff?
I do.
I do too. So let's just end it here. And then we'll come back next week with part 2 of our expectations conversation, because this is already almost an hour and a half, which is longer than our normal episode.
Yeah.
I feel really good about these conversations. I feel like, yes, it might be good for y'all, but I just feel like we're able to talk about a lot of stuff that needs to clearly be talked about, so we can see, have this perspective and really understand where the other person is coming from.
True that.
Thank you guys for joining us for another episode. If you are not already following us on social media, one, what's wrong with you? But second, don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube at If It Isn't Love Podcast, and on Twitter at If It Isn't Love PO1. I know you want to try and take my hand so you can do that. Thank you guys for joining us, and make sure that you tune in for part 2 of the Expectations episode next week. All right, bye.
Congratulations. I'm 85.
What?
I'm 85 years old. You took so long.
Shut up. What are you talking about?
Turn into Nicki Minaj.